go. Usually takes a second or three for something to happen on YouTube's. Then for the picture to actually come through takes a few seconds later. And now I'm relatively certain I'm live. I will say hi to the world. Video log for, what was it, May 19th? Another day in paradise. I'm feeling pretty wavy. I only took like a half a gummy, drinking my coffee, kind of in the zone, but like kind of feeling a little unconfident about what I should work on. And well, let me show you why. Let's flip over to so I was thinking I might not want to show my notes on stream because I was taking a bunch of maybe, I don't know, personal, not really personal, but just talking about some shit that might be sensitive to certain people. I can show Figma though, and so maybe I start writing my notes in Figma. I've always thought about doing this. Oh, big screen. Boom. I've always thought about trying to do more kind of, create systems in Figma where, like, boom, here's a new note. Note title. But how about a good note title like Figma UX Systems? Create, well, it's sort of app prototypes right here. Well, and some of they can be sort of semi-functional. Like this is actually not the worst note-taking experience. The problem is I don't have any control over the app, over Figma. So it is what it is, and it's not perfect. And I don't think I need either of these, and so there's a little note. And I don't know if I like this. Right here in Figma. So it's not bad, and I do have a lot of control over fonts and styles and whatever, which is sort of better than well, so okay, let's think out loud. Let's create a new workspace and maybe try and keep it a little cleaner. This would be 519. It's just not sure what else to name it. Let's put this towards the top. Let's make this 0. This is really big, so I might want to. Are these fonts? Let's resize these to be like more incremental. 36. I should do this kind of once and for all. That one's 36, that one's 20. Okay, so we don't need this one. I'm thinking I copy this and hit K point, what, 6? I don't know. Like, half size is pretty small. All the font sizes are now at weird increments again, but so I could go back through and do 40, 20, 24? I don't know, that's interesting. This could be 24 too, if this is 40. And then maybe 16, just so it doesn't get too small. It's not bad. Small note. And I've often thought about, changing this to a slightly darker background, just so it, especially if it's sitting next to it, you have like that border between it. But one of the problems with like duplicating these and seeing what it looks like, just doing a quick duplicate, you see content here, but it's the same content, and so then you have to like fill it out with something reasonable, and prototyping takes time. You gotta like trial and error, try a bunch of shit, fix it, it doesn't ever really look done. Like, is it good enough? It can always be better. The length of content matters. What it says actually matters. Sometimes filler content is useful, but like, then it looks like filler content. Well, so having one section on these is not ideal. Stay organized was kind of my next. I do have like global layouts, categories, areas, workspaces, pages, etc. There's all kinds of things to like staying organized in Figma. You have the pages over here. You have like this big workspace. I'm at 42% zoom. I should be at 100. That's big, but like you can put stuff inside of other things, and that can be organizationally useful, but you got to think through what kind of system you want. Obviously, I've been working a lot with different types of layouts and creating this thing right here is kind of interesting. That wasn't intentional. I don't even know what that's doing there, but creating multi-column layouts is definitely a thing of the future, and we haven't really figured this out. To create a multi-level application, you have to think through all that structure and organization. And it's not actually that hard, but like what it looks like is important, and where you click and the sidebars and all these things. I was thinking that if this sidebar can kind of visually mimic this thing, as it kind of does, level 1, first section, and that's kind of the ideal, right? Like it's just so simple that it's kind of just a preview of it. But getting it all to flow, I thought a lot about this. There's obviously a lot of moving parts. Dragging this shit around and getting it to work quickly is it's not easy. It's like am I wasting time? Well, I'm kind of learning and I'm doing stuff that is kind of cool, but it's so disorganized. I don't know if it's ever going to get anywhere, and I'm just kind of running with it and not sure what looks best. So I'm trying different things. A lot of times, doing a different variation just takes a few seconds to lay, especially once you get the layouts switch set up properly. This is pretty trippy, huh? It's actually really cool. I should copy as ping, right? I don't think I went this far, and then we paste it. No, we want to paste the ping, then copy the ping data, and now we can put it on the frame, and then we can go in and set it to tile and change the size, and now that's going to do that, which is not really what we want. What we could do is Control Z this, and what am I thinking? Well, alright, let's just get rid of this frame for a second. If we duplicate this over here, and I don't know, should we set this to tile first and leave it at, it says it's at 50%. That's interesting. Not sure exactly why it says that, because it seems like it's at 100%, but if we just take this shape, this image, it's like a rectangular shape, and we turn off the constrained proportions so that we can just drag it sideways, boom, this is what we want. We want like, but we don't actually want the, we could crop off like the top and or bottom if we wanted to. There's not many places this can go. It could go as like a full width background in a way. Sort of how it started is like, I mean the two guys are almost cooler than the repeating one's just kind of like overload and creepy, but the two guys are kind of like, their heads are conjoined. They're both old dudes. They're like twins, but they're a little bit, they're kind of close to each other. And their glowing eyes are a little creepy. Dark mode was kind of fun to mess around with. I like it, but it's, well, maybe I should have run with this one on the other page. I mean, frankly, all right, let's control copy this whole thing and go back over here and paste this. Maybe this is the kind of workspace I should be playing around with, is putting everything in these boxes and trying to make it look right. I would have to, copying over this content to that one is not easy. Maybe I want to keep kind of external notes just to have it separate from these, and then use this as like the next workspace area. And I could plan out actual pages this way, but picking which page I want to start with is not entirely clear to me. I mean, like creating a page for UX, you know, like I got a lot of stuff I could put on there and that would be cool, but what does it look like? And what does it look like both on desktop and mobile? If they're single columns and it's just a multi-column thing, then boom, you just stack them all up. No big deal. Getting a layout to wrap on, so I think last week I was looking into CSS grids because I've looked at those before, and the problem with it was it seemed kind of tricky. Like so this is actually CSS grid type shit, and you can use different setups to get it to work. None of these actually match like the vertical masonry thing that I was kind of thinking of. Now, I do think if you create auto rows and whatnot, I had a code pen working with some blocks. It's pretty simple, but it'd be a way to test out some grid type shit. It's basically like this is what I want, like different heights, even variable heights, and then so if I define the columns, I think they'd have to be like responsive columns to add some, and there is a slight way to do that. I'm just not sure if it's gonna work with like the wrapping, because you know if all of these are different sizes and it's gonna kind of go through like a priority top to, I don't know, does it go 1 2 3 4 across the top? Probably, but then every time you like resize the browser, it's gonna reshuffle them, and that's gonna work properly. It's gonna be, you're gonna oftentimes just get some weird layout alignments where, you know, it's like flooring. You want them to be kind of staggered and not right on top of each other for it to look the best, but that doesn't really matter. It's just, can I get it to even work? I think so, but I haven't figured it out yet, and spending a lot of time with CSS grid to then fail at figuring out how to do this. All right, so you'd want variable number of columns and ideally not have to write a breakpoint for each one, but I guess that's what is necessary. It's not actually the end of the world. The problem is then you're writing the breakpoint for the size of the window and not the size of the container. I'm not sure, are element queries a thing yet? I remember reading something about these. Can I use element query? Probably not. Container queries. Of course, Internet Explorer is just shite, and the rest of them seem to be okay. Opera Mini, whatever. It says only 92% of global users are going to be able to load it properly, and so is that good enough? I mean, actually, I think it is. Like, people who use these shit browsers and they have shit web experiences should just get off of them and make everything easier. But it's also, okay, so which one's number one? I guess that's a ways back. These feature flags, you gotta read the notes. So it looks like a lot of the issues have been fixed, I guess. So maybe they're worth it. But this is the endless game of web development, of what actually works. And that is actually some dog shit, because it's really frustrating for a developer to have to... the more complexity you throw into the system, the more kind of like question marks you have, where it's just the entire thing is now like, well, is that going to be the source of just failure, almost? I don't know. So using the like grid template columns, repeat, like autofill or whatever the fuck it was kind of cool, but I don't think it was gonna wrap properly unless maybe I need to set up auto rows and then make them increments of a certain size and then make this things. But the problem is if they're variable height, how can the grid intelligently put these at like increments if you're doing auto rows at certain increments? So that I think you have to tell it how big you want shit. I don't think the auto height, if this is just a standard div that hugs its content and you put 3 paragraphs or 10 paragraphs and it automatically adjusts height wise, I don't think that's going to jive with the rows feature where the shit lines up with the rows. It's just like a whole different thing. And so this is essentially just a column. But to get the wrapping to work where it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 and wraps around and also nestles up, I mean, let me just do a quick Google search about it and see. I'm sure people have tried. I'm not sure how. Let's see, CSS grid masonry. It shouldn't be that hard, right? CSS tricks could be a good place. Not sure who this guy is. And no. Grid integrated display masonry. What the fuck? Oh my god. Neither of these look like what I want. I guess that sort of. 1, 2, 3. Okay, yeah, this doesn't need to be different widths, but I guess that's it. 1, 2, 3. Grid template rows masonry. What does that mean? Rows masonry. Fuck. Can I use CSS grid masonry? Oh my lord. Masonry. Oh god, look at this red. It's bloody. It's not even anywhere. Oh, so thanks a lot for that suggestion, CSS. Probably says in here, just so you know, you can't actually use this. Okay, yeah, Pinterest style, definitely. It's kind of the thing, although I don't like the captions that are unclear which one they go to here. This is not the kind of help I want. I don't want a long fucking article. Masonry layout. This is going to say the same shit. Yeah, experimental. God damn it. You can't do it? Dedicated libraries. Webkit.org. The Great Debate. Okay, so yep, it looks like you can't do it yet. It looks like you'd have to write some JavaScript. Really, the big problem that you can do this easily with just normal columns, as long as you don't need to wrap them or whatever. It's like, well, would this whole column just go down here? This is the big problem, especially with long columns. Although you might want to be lazy loading these things because you don't want to just automatically load a huge wall of things, right? I mean, maybe you do. In the beginning, before my site's not even live, my site is such a garbage thing right now that doing anything is better than nothing, but having to redo it later. Well, this was mainly for the home page, or just any really like kind of, it's like an adaptive, responsive kind of anything layout where you just throw shit in there, and it could even be, pulling all these blocks in kind of dynamically where I don't know, do I have to add them manually, import this thing and import this thing and import this thing, and just have like 100 lines of code where I'm importing each thing and rendering it into place. And then, you know, if this is a container, column 1, column 2, column 3, is this column 4? And does it just wrap like that? It could, but that's kind of shit. Now, well, so you could potentially do it in chunks like this. So that then at some point, like when this breaks, this goes down here kind of a thing. And then these two go below. Chunking it actually might, I don't know. If you're going to write the code to like manage the containers and move them around, you might as well just do it in a more fluid way where it, but then you probably have to listen to the resizing of the browser and do a bunch of math to calculate how many columns you want. You definitely have to do that shit. So expecting the computer to do it all for you is, you know, what we want and not what we get. So maybe this layout is not worth, but I think I could work on a library to do that. I just don't know if I can do that right now. And so this whole idea is a very similar thing here. There are two different kind of scales, a big one and a small one. And I'm not sure exactly how this is all going to come together. I don't have enough brain power to do this all myself. Obviously, I'm fizzling here. I've come a long way, but I gotta, you know, actually plug the shit in and get it working and turn on the lights and get people there to use it and convince people like it's worth using. And I think I'm getting closer. I'm definitely getting closer, but it's not quite there yet. And the interesting thing here that I'm just thinking about, these dark boxes and these light boxes, is that you can't do this on white. You can't have a lighter box than white. Now you could do it on gray. It's actually not a bad idea. In fact, let's take this one and copy it over here. We're gonna have to probably scale this way down for it to look proper. Oh, not like that. This is because the fucking paper is locked. God damn it, paper. I'm doing this complex background thing. Now we can scale it, and it should scale properly. And actually, let's just do K.6, because I think that's generally the kind of scale we want. Now we go back to width fill. And this is, well, this was supposed to be white, isn't it? Isn't the paper set to, yeah, like this? Now we probably need to jack this way up, and then we need to make this darker. And then these, I forget, one of them is for the corner, I think, so that one's for the corner, which definitely needs to go, I don't know, maybe even to 100%. And then this one maybe just to 50%. Oh no, can't be that high or you can't see the corners. This has to be like 30%. So that's interesting. It's a little light, or like hard to see. It's pretty hard to see. And this could go darker, for sure. But then everything gets harder to read. It might be the exact same problem, just, you know, I mean, generally it's a symmetrical problem, like the level of contrast and whatever, but I was just thinking how having the dark cards look kind of nice, having the light cards also look kind of nice. They're definitely clearer and more visible. And that you just couldn't have white card, this is like white transparent, just lightens up the background a little bit. And you can go darker or lighter with it, and they're both kind of different and unique, but you probably don't actually need both of them. It's just a stylistic thing. I actually kind of lean towards the darker ones, just look a little bit more badass. But that there's like a million little decisions to be made, and I don't know if I can do this. So writing tests for my framework would be super useful. Creating the test blocks. I was just on, I don't remember which fucking site it was. I think it was my local site, and I was digging through some old tests, and I had these nice little test blocks that were something like, well, let me just whip this together real quick. It was something like Shift A, Enter, set both of these to fill, and then this one goes dark, and then this one has some sort of label on it that would then need to be, I forget where you click to make this, so many clicks to change this color. Seriously? I thought I broke it. Click here, then white. Oh my god. They're trying to block me, folks. That's what it feels like. It's like, well, obviously not everything's perfect. This one can go Shift A. Left aligned, could be center line. Definitely should have some padding, but maybe not so much. And yeah, these are kind of cool actually. Maybe this isn't white, but like a light gray, so it's not so bright. And then this is the test area. And it could actually be like it really be test / test dash name is sort of, I think, the URL structure, which then, I mean, you could make this look like this pretty easily, but that's a little more confusing, is it? I don't know. Or maybe that's it. It's sort of a URL. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I think actually just, instead of doing the hash, just doing test name like this isn't a bad idea. That's probably cleanest. And then this is the test area, and you can put whatever the heck you want in there. So if you have something you want to put in there, this goes in here. This is auto layouted, and the padding is now all jacked up. You probably want some padding on there. You may or may not want a background color. What is the background color to the whole page? This is, you know, well, so you're gonna have presumably more of these. But before we do that, actually, seriously. What was that little thing? Yeah, what is this? Delete that, delete this. Let's fix this padding. Top and bottom padding. Alright, that's not terrible. But should this fill? How big is this? 1400 pixels? Where does this center? That's a good question. But maybe this should fill by default. And then do you resize the whole window to test the responsiveness of your tests, or does this test thing have its own? You know, can you resize this independently of the other ones? These are all questions that don't really matter, but you have to figure out, right? Like, this is the thing. This bottom padding, I think, should just be a lot more, so it looks like the bottom. And then when we make a change, we gotta double click into this. We should just add a little padding here so we can then properly click on the inner one. And there's some amount of spacing here, and then this whole thing goes into presumably some sort of UI thing. And though this probably wouldn't be white, or we just crank down the background color of it. I mean, that's kind of interesting. But it's so boxy. It's like boxes and boxes and boxes inside boxes. Now, what it does do is it gives you like a definitive area. Why is there space? Okay, it's the space on this thing that's now messing with it. We could just get rid of the top and bottom space to still a little off. But anyway, yeah, so putting these test blocks on the test page is something I've done before, and usually I just have one list of them and it works, but I kind of want multiple columns because I have this giant fucking monitor, and this is maybe this limitation or feature or whatever is slowing me down, and it definitely is. Like, can I figure out a quick way around it? Well, I either have to hard code columns, or I have to, and then you have to decide what goes in which column essentially, or I have to create a system of hierarchical content where I can nest things, and that, I think that's actually what I'm kind of leaning towards. And it actually doesn't really need a proper view. It's just more like, well, the layout is probably more important than that. So let's kind of just think this through. If we have a block of content, and it's sort of like this little system here. Maybe I duplicate this and use these. If we have this block of content, and we want to click on something and it slides over here. So I don't need this test. Functional. We probably wouldn't have one of these things here. And then, I don't know, in this case, we don't even have this. Like, this is just this. And we don't have this. And so one of the problems with these multi-column, like, launchers, essentially, when any one of these content items you could click on and then it opens it kind of in like a side view. Number one, it's super redundant. If it says the exact same shit, then you actually kind of just want like a control panel to fly out with some buttons. This nested content drives me crazy. I think sometimes you have properties and you want to do properties. Have a property panel, but if I wanted to have tests and subtests, how can I do it? Well, right now the actual whole router the test thing is using doesn't really allow it, so maybe I just need to get off this shit and just go with single columns. It's just fuck, man. Rendering a single column of tests. Let's see what that would look like. It would either look like this, or I could potentially, this is centered, center it, or this. And it's like, okay, it doesn't look terrible. It probably looks better than it did a second ago, but because it's just simpler, but it's not really what I'm looking for. Also, it's hard to test the responsiveness of this if, well, there's really no tool yet. It's just like super dumb and simple, but maybe that's all I need right now. How wide are these things? It's because my test framework right now, the way the URLs match the test names here, so that when you click on them, it can isolate each test. All right, I can definitely make a better multi-column experience for this. Let's think this through. What I'm looking for is, and let's maybe go back to white, or at least just crank this up so I can see it. I don't know about that. So testing light mode versus dark mode. Like if these are more style tests, like just building blocks and components and kind of just documenting different things. What I have done before is create something like a tree of a navigation tree that goes on the side of this little system. In fact, then it would be more like let's pull this one out of here and put this one here and make this whole thing a lot less. Are these all set to fill? Yes, okay. So it's sort of like a tab system, and how wide it is, again, it's like it's unclear to me how to control. If you're designing layouts for, maybe you just put a max width on this thing, but it's generally not the best idea. But I guess if that's part of the content, like why not put a max width on it? It just tops out like this, but should this then be just set to hug? Oh my god, there's so many containers here. It's hard to say. I'm kind of confused what this is doing. It's not really set up properly. It's not really clear how these things navigate with these things, but I could do it with like some horizontal padding type shit where it's break this and go white, and this goes like that. Now it looks like that's the tab that navigates that. Again, the light and dark, I'm getting confused here. It's not really, it's too high contrast and looks kind of crazy, but this is more what I'm thinking for something like this, is rather than have this kind of stacked block system that's just very rigid and only one dimensional. But then subtests would be kind of, actually, this is just coming to me right now. What if I take this and put it down here? Maybe it goes in here. Whoops. That's not right. Boom. Okay, that's interesting. So it's sort of like a uniform way to add subtests that get nested properly. And so maybe by default, just the first one runs, and you got to click through them to see. Maybe these are, they could almost be like subtests. They could actually be nested underneath. All right, let's go. Let's put this one up here. Let's take all of these, and should they be nested? And if we right align them, then it's sort of, that's interesting. Are these actually subtests or kind of like peers? Because you might want either one. In fact, you could then just take this out of the thing and put it. Oh, this needs to go back to width fill. There we go. And then, yeah, so you could have like a little hierarchy there. I don't know if that's the right design and they're all super bold, but so generally speaking, the test blocks don't know anything about the content, and the content could have buttons within it, but then, and so how does that work? Well, haven't really gotten that far yet. If this inner system wants to launch new content, either the whole thing needs to get bigger to allow that to happen, which could easily happen. You know, I could just let the test system use the full width of my giant screen, and then, you know, create these kind of like multi-dimensional things where they can get as tall as they want, and they also have not necessarily full width, but a giant width to work with, and then resizing, the browser resizes the space and gives me some kind of like control. That's not a bad way to go. And so essentially, I don't know if this is the best container for this thing, but let's try and throw this in there real quick. Should I shift A this, or does that break? No, I think that's a good idea. Alright, that's kind of cool. We could just delete this because we have that already over there and it doesn't really fit as well. Now clearly these subtests are kind of, I don't know, like the super high contrast. I could fix the colors a bit and tone it down. It's not bad necessarily having this bright white. It draws your focus to it, but the dark theme. All right, so we start with a dark theme, then we go to a light theme, and then we go back to a dark theme. That's a lot. I don't know if that's the right way. I think we could make it more subtle. But just thinking this through in terms of the setup, it's not really obeying padding right now. I was just going to try and get this to line up a little better. In terms of the layout and the kind of potential structure here, I don't know how many levels deep this goes. Actually, these subtests don't even really need to be in the sidebar. One of the questions with the test runner is, does it automatically run what's in here, or it just, so you'd be creating these subtests within this kind of test block. And so, you know, as it runs through, the way I have it set up currently is it runs the root level tests, or it's really just runs all the tests at the page that as they get added. So this one gets added and it runs, then this one gets added and it runs, and so this wouldn't actually be there, right? This would then be a separate page like this, and then this would be like the second test, and that would go white. Should probably have just dragged it around to not have to do all this, but only takes a second. And then let's just duplicate this, make this one full width, and then delete this one, and then we're going to control cut and paste to replace. I mean, it looks so similar, it's kind of, let's just delete this and this maybe. But yeah, so like it's a tab system, so it's not, maybe it doesn't run the second test until you click on it. I haven't really thought those things through. Sometimes you might want a huge list where you can just, you know, run them all, scroll through it, and see them all. And like, this is another one of these decisions I'm trying to pre-think, like, well, which way is better? And it's like, well, you might actually want to go either way with that. And I don't know all the situations in which that might happen. And this is what, you know, as a trying to create a system for that is designed properly, you want to think through what might happen. And I'm not quite there yet. I'm pre-thinking it. I don't try not to. I'm trying to think through how the simple system of tabs can allow me to have potentially infinite nested tabs. Getting the URLs to work properly, so like I can just put a URL here. It's essentially my website. This is probably going to be some sort of like framework / class, let's just call it a thing, / tests / that's it. That's the main tests page that renders this little tree. And it is a lot like the file system, so I really need to figure these things out. What's the simplest way? I mean, doing like having a limited number of limited hierarchy on the sidebar. So for a lot of these sidebar navigation things, like these, I don't know why I duplicated that one, but it's well, yeah, you can have a hierarchy within one sidebar, and then you can also kind of connect these together where you have like level 1, level 2, and then level 3 and level 4. It's not clear visually that that's what might be going on here, although I could probably set that up. Let's see if we can do that real quick. I don't actually mind this really bright thing, but I'm thinking I just want to maybe grab some of these. I switched fonts though for whatever freaking reason. Maybe it's just, no, this one's not blocky yet. I kind of want these in their own blocks, don't I? Not always, but how come none of these are in their own blocks? Is this Montserrat 16? I guess I'm just going to grab this for the font styles. It's kind of like all I need here, I think. But all right, we're going to take these. Let's duplicate this, enter, and I can't add each one to an auto layout without clicking on each one and hitting Shift A, I think. So I'm going to do that. Now if I enter in, I can add a fill to all of them. I can add the same padding to all of them. And here's the blocks that I was talking about. Enter, I'm gonna add some more horizontal padding than vertical padding. And I think, I don't know if I'm just gonna have 0 spacing on them. That's kind of what I'm thinking for a second. Having a hierarchy gets kind of confusing because it's not really clear what goes with what. Let's see if we can think this through. So with tabs, you basically have one active. So the basic system is just kind of like this. And let's go ahead and duplicate this a couple more times. Enter, enter, right click, plugins, content reel, text, full name, apply all. Okay. And then for all of these, we actually want enter, fill. Actually, we can just remove the fill from all of them except for, add it back to the first one. All right, that looks a little wonky, but it's essentially what is going on with these. Making them bigger and more prominent makes that feel better, I think. Like if they were all more prominent. Control Alt C. Enter, enter, Control Alt V. But actually, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one maybe is less bold, either semi-bold or medium, or probably medium. So that looks a little less like, you know, a little bit more prominent, a little less. When they were so small here, let's time travel real quick. Let's just take both of these, I think. Well, let's Shift A these and then just copy it as one item. Then Control Z, 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 Z. I think that was it. And then Control V. We can compare that change from these small tabs to the bigger ones. Definitely depends on what size you're looking at it, but just the size of this tab is very small compared to the... Okay, so we could definitely just shrink this down a bit, and if we properly do this and get rid of the spacing and then shrink this down, it reacts better. So that definitely looks better there, and probably would here a little bit too, but maybe making them bigger makes it just offsets the big size of this thing a little bit better. Okay, so now you can click on any one of these and switch the tab. I think that visually makes sense. The question is can we get to a hierarchy now? And that's more like, well, where does it go? Does this get repeated in here? There's a lot of questions about, are there these, is this a table contents of like subsections? And so one of it is just like the basic frickin' structure like this. Like, can we get this in here? Like, yeah, we could just duplicate this. No, this is not going to work right because this is set to the wrong direction, and then we need to switch these, and this needs to be fill. Enter. These do look like to be filled. Okay, so this is sort of right, but then we could take this and add a left padding to it to nest it, which I think kind of works. It's not like you have to, but we have space because it's so much smaller and gives it that hierarchical feel. We could definitely add more padding to this. You do want to think about alignment with all the other things, but okay. And then this would probably be way bigger, right? Like that's just the preview, and this would be Shift A, width, fill, I think, so that, and then left aligned, whatever padding, and then height fill. I think it actually wants to be hug because it needs to, as you add more content, what would be the right font for that? I'm actually kind of feeling something in this medium range. And then plugins, maybe lorem ipsum, generate like 4 sentences, boom. And if you had, well, we could generate 4 different sentences, and maybe it doesn't begin with lorem ipsum, generate 4 sentences, and then we add some more spacing, but I don't know, we could mess around with this all day. This is really tight on the left side here. Why is that? Maybe, I think these would all need to go. All right, this one, enter, and then left and right padding. There we go. Well, and then, so this is like 1, 2, 3 section titles. We don't have a subsection title here. I think this is actually pretty fundamental, and I did this already. I did this over there, but remaking it's not a bad idea necessarily. If we want to just use these names as the section titles, we could drag them over one by one. And then select them all and make them bigger, not too big. So this probably needs to then go smaller again. And these kind of get grouped together generally, and we need to duplicate one of these down here. All right, that's essentially the nested hierarchy, right? Parents and children up here. This is like a preview, a limited preview of what we're gonna get with those section titles and main title, kind of definitely duplicated and redundant, but there could be any amount of content in here. And so these might be pushed down the screen and there might be a lot of them. Whoops. So having that preview and little jump bar could be a good idea, I think. So for the tests and the subtests, having a hierarchy in the sidebar, which is sort of what's going on here, only these are too big, essentially. Scale them down. But then getting from the subtests to these kind of subtests here. Also, there could easily be content up here, right? That's part. This is still in there. We actually want it up in this container. Content that's sort of part of the main thing that's not part of a subsection. So these are almost like their own pages. Like they could literally be, like you could drag this from a sub page to the main bar over here as its own. You know, you could basically promote it to a peer of the top one because it's got like a title. There's one thing with Notion Notes that doesn't work so well. It's kind of like the promoting and demoting things from pages to sub pages to whatever. All right, so this definitely is, this could be bigger. It is kind of the main thing. The spacing could be fixed a lot, but I'm not really so worried about figuring that out. I'm really just trying to think logically about all these different pieces. And okay, so how about subpages of these? Can there be subsections? If this is H1, we have H2, and then do we have H3s supported on our hierarchy? They don't have to go, they could, but they wouldn't have to go in the nav. And another question is can you select these to promote them, sort of, well, to temporarily just to shift the view. So this is kind of the, gets tricky, but more or less, can we, I think if I copy this and paste it in here, it keeps the styles. I sort of wanted to more or less put this here and then Control Alt C, Control Alt V, and then delete this one. And kind of just do that everywhere. Like this one goes here, Control Alt C, Control Alt V, and delete this one. I'm just gonna just leave it at that, but essentially it's like, well, and then all these would be different. In fact, at that level, then Courtney becomes, you know, the peer of Floyd, and then like Albert is more or less like up here now. And this could be like whoops. Some sort of path-based system or breadcrumbs, and it's not entirely clear to me how this all looks, but you know, instead of having these siblings here, we would have this one, and yeah, this really kind of does need to go in here, and this should be more like this just for fun, but this goes Control Alt C, Control Alt V. This is way too much work to replace the names of these things, but I'm probably better off actually just typing it out. Ronald Richard. I can't copy and paste it because it keeps the styling and whatever, but okay, so yeah, so it's shifting the scope of the sidebar and the content to be just one level deeper. We've now activated Floyd Miles. And does this need to have its own background where like it's visibly clickable and it's kind of like a section? It actually is not a bad idea, because you could fix the padding on this so it's not just so excessive, or at least this thing is more of like a, well, you can kind of create these invisible stacks. So let me see if I can fix this, or at least change this. So essentially we get rid of the fill, we get rid of the padding. We're going to just set it all to 5 so there's at least a little padding there so I can kind of see it, or maybe 10. Whoops, control 10. All right, and then this one becomes shift A. Then this one's already, we're going to get rid of the fill and 0 out the padding so that they're all the same. And then more or less all of these, let's just click the parent, click enter, we get all of the children. Now we add a fill, which can just be white for now, and then we can get rid of the spacing down, whoop, not that spacing, shift enter again, it didn't work, so let's, there we go, get the parent and crank this down to like, well, so if you do like 3 pixel pad, all right, we don't have any padding, hit enter, add some padding to these guys so it doesn't look terrible. All right, now, all right, this is, probably want to tighten up the top and bottom on a lot of these because it's supposed to be like a minimal separator that's not actually even a page. So the way this looks is it looks like it's a separate page. Like if you were to print this out, then this would be completely separate things. But they're very close together, and you could even go down to like 1 pixel, and then it looks almost like just a subtle little section line. But now if it's set up like this, when you hover over one of these, it could, well, we were talking about Floyd Miles here, we could darken it a little bit or do some sort of hover effect so it just, and maybe a different cursor so it looks and feels clickable, and now all the sections are clickable. This is definitely the way to add, you know, custom commenting on things, like to give feedback and whatever. Like if everything are these little interactive blocks. So I think that's a very fundamental, like, it's essentially a section. That's all it is a section. Is this the H2 style? I don't know. The typography could vary greatly. The previews, I definitely think, should just be like the same kind of thing. Should look generally the same as the, you know, the sidebar can essentially just be the title plus the subtitles, and again could have a third layer of hierarchy to it. It's not a terrible idea, but designing that out is maybe it's probably not necessary even if you have the proper, well, so let's duplicate this whole thing. Let's actually kind of put it right here. We can then take this, I'm gonna try cutting it and control paste to replace, control shift R. I should learn that one. We then get rid of this 10, 0 out the padding. So this might have issues as it scrolls, because like I think this would kind of be a weird effect, although this is a hover effect here, so it's all questionable. Like you'd have to test that through and figure out what should be what color and when, but that's kind of the idea there, is that you have, and this is definitely crammed in too much. It's possible you want to have these like inset a little bit so that it, because it, I'm trying to think how that would work. You could, if let's say if you make this manually smaller and put the white fill on this and then center this. Boom. Okay, so yeah, it's just like a very minimal amount of padding on the side, but it looks clearly nested. Okay, now you have this like, well, number one, this one could have more padding. I don't know how you'd actually want to do this, but it could be like scaled up a bit, and these could be more, a little bit more subordinate, is that the right word, or inferior or whatever, like nested. And I don't know, maybe I should set that back. Let's control copy this, control Z, 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 come on now. I think that was it. All right, so subtle little change in spacing might have a nice kind of like, you know, intuitive like understanding of how the thing is structured, because this is like the thing and then these are like the sub things, and so now it looks a little bit more structured that way as it did over here. But you know, with these having full padding like lining up with the content, it works quite a bit differently. I think having this maybe even somewhere in between. I think we could tighten this up, but then still let the text kind of mostly align. You could reduce this so that the text is aligned from here to here. It's not super important for me to figure this out right now, but just things to think about. But I do think the sections and subsections could be recursive, and so you could potentially with a UI click a button to add a subsection. Essentially, you're just, maybe it's like a Control T. Well, so let's say, let's duplicate this and say Control T for title. Oh, come on, give me an arrow. And that would be, maybe it's got to be bold here. It's a little competing or whatever, but like it's definitely smaller. And then the title automatically has a section, or like the title automatically kind of becomes like this thing that could be a section, and then where does this go in the flow? It probably doesn't matter. This is just a paragraph, this is just a section, and the section automatically, because it's already in a subsection, it's like this is level 1, Albert is level 1, Floyd is level 2, this one right here is level 3, and so it has to be an H3 and it has to have smaller text. But it still could follow this nested hierarchy. Like, maybe this one goes back to white and we add a little padding to it, and it's a clickable thing, and when you hover it, it changes colors to let you know it's clickable, and when you click it, what happens? Well, I would guess that the path changes to, you know, target this thing specifically, and then you'd have Albert Flores / Floyd Miles appear on the breadcrumbs, and then maybe the navigation here shows, you know, the top level one here is the one that you selected. So it'd essentially be, let's grab this thing again, Control Copy, Control Paste. It's not what we want. We want it, fuck, it was basically up here, and then added to this one with a Shift A, and then / Floyd Miles, and then this would become like Control + T is title, and these would all be, these essentially are the peers, I think, and so you wouldn't always have to have them there, and then it may or may not even be that helpful to have this sidebar and preview, but, well, let's Control + T title. We gotta retype all these. Why isn't this set to fill as it should? And it just has a single text block right now, so maybe it just doesn't have any of this shit. But, well, Control zoom out. Whoops, I didn't want that one. Oh my god. I think we just delete all of these sections. That's what I was trying to do. Delete. Okay, so that's sort of like, you know, if you would click on this, you'd then drill into it even more, and then you'd have, maybe it gives you more controls, like your toolbar up here gives you, you know, options, but you could also in here Control T again, and then add a subsection to it, and now it's going to look, if maybe you can't edit it right here and as a level 3 thing, you have to click on it first to edit it. Maybe you can. It wouldn't actually be that hard. In fact, would you then have the same rule for this? You can't edit this in place? Well, you probably would want to. You wouldn't always want to have to drill deeper. But maybe clicking, you know, like maybe it's an arrow that kind of like, I do have chevrons. I do just have, you know, this, I could make another one of these. This might be a little not what we want, but let's Shift A this, send it here. Let's make the spacing auto, and then we just make this a little arrow. It could just be a little button. I could frame this actually, Shift A, and then a little, I think we just want horizontal padding. This is fixed width. We want this hug contents. We want a fill color that needs to be gray so it shows up. It is centered, but it's not properly centered. I'm not sure why. It's definitely a text rendering issue. It's like, wait, is there a space after it? Oh, there was. Okay. All right. So just a little arrow, probably more on a UI level than like a floating thing there. But you know, if you wanted to edit it in place, maybe you could do that. You'd probably have to be in edit mode, and then the editor would have to know which box you're editing and handle all that properly. But if you wanted to, at any point, any one of these sections could be kind of activatable things. And as I was saying earlier, it has a hover effect and can click, but I don't know if you'd want to click anywhere. And I don't know if you could click on a paragraph. Would you want it to hover each thing individually? I think this would likely depend on what kind of mode you're in. Maybe the default mode doesn't automatically do that, but maybe if you hover it long enough, it kind of activates like some extra controls. I don't know. Maybe you just hover it and there's like a little sidebar button that's got like a gear icon on it, and so when you hover it, you always have that option, and it just kind of follows your mouse around. Could work. I don't know. I haven't really. You'd have to draw these things out and feel it out. Be like, does that work? I haven't designed a nested app before. I mean, I've played around with these things a bit in JavaScript and rendered nested things, and it's not terribly hard once you get it working, but it can be really confusing when you're not sure what's going on. All right, so I like this idea. This is definitely the nested test that I was thinking of. And it's sort of just a simple mechanism of sections. And so whether it's this content or whether it's sections, it's essentially the same thing. It's a hierarchy of pages, and getting it responsive, I'm not sure if, man, that last sip of coffee just now is kind of like, kind of shocking, and maybe I should lay off the coffee from now on, or at least for today. So the way it looks is not so important. The way that it functions, well, the way that it looks is important. Creating a basic kind of flow like this and thinking through the mobile implications. So 3 levels is probably as much as you... What? I don't know. You could always just keep going deeper and deeper. Why limit it, right? I mean, one of the problems is you're running out of horizontal space. Not really, actually. You could probably go considerably deeper. It does get visually kind of exhausting to have like lots of subsections. So like an H4 level all in one view. I mean, this so far is actually pretty well organized. Like, it's not so hard to see, okay, this is the main thing, this is the second level thing, and you know, certainly we could have more of these. I think it's this spacing here. Lots of different looks and feels to it. Should probably have like names for the different types of stacks so that, you know, you can use them more easily. I think the wrapping structure, like the HTML structure, is different for these, and so it's not just a CSS thing. You kind of have to pick your poison and figure out how many layers and wrapping and subsections and whatever. Now, it is also possible that if you could get it so that one template, one HTML kind of thing can work with different CSS things. So you can essentially just have a CSS class that swaps the theme from like theme 1 to theme 2. That's often useful, but sometimes it's just you need an extra wrapper. And then sometimes you can add that wrapper and then go back and fix both of the themes to work with one set of HTML, where you don't need the wrapper for one of them, but you just put it in there anyway and it doesn't break it. And so, that can be useful, but it's like this back and forth, like, wait, but now if I want to do this, then this extra wrapper actually is bad and may not prevent you, but might make certain things way trickier. And so that now you're splitting hairs and you're trying to make these really tough decisions where you can't really see all of the consequences. And that's a tough place to be in. And frankly, I'm getting a headache right now even thinking about it. So maybe I go for a walk. Maybe I just try and take a nap for a minute. I think we're going to lay off the coffee. I've only been streaming for an hour here. I was working for a little bit on my notes before I started streaming, but I don't feel like giving up just yet today. I just feel a lot less useful. I feel like I'm running out of energy here. So this is definitely a problem that other people have solved before. You can go and find these, hierarchical documentations. I found a number of different ones. Sometimes I'll bookmark them. A lot of times I lose them where I'm like, wait, I don't remember where that one was. Adding the third level nav to the sidebar wouldn't be terribly hard. It should be somewhat doable. But I do think this whole block here, which is essentially a page, like this Albert Flores page, is... by the way, these are fake people, or just the random name generator. This whole page could be, well, like what goes in here. And that could then vary from just being this kind of 2-column thing to like a multi-column thing. In fact, that's something that I haven't really dug into here yet, but so the preview to the sub-content, all right, it's sort of like this. What if, I don't know why I'm going with this one. I kind of like this one better, but there's all this stuff here. Well, let's try this one. What if this stuff were part of, how do I put something next to these? All right, we're going to put it over here. We're going to add some padding to this just so I have a... confused what I'm looking at here. Yeah. And then this one should more easily jump next to this one. Whoa, bro. That's not what we wanted. This needs to be fixed a bit. But the idea here is that, let's just get rid of the second one because that's confusing. Let's get rid of this and this and this and maybe even this. I don't know. Like, all right, so the general idea is that you can have this preview of something, and maybe it even has the button here. But when you click it, this is only, this type name and paragraph here is only the preview, and it has like more stuff inside of it. And then this probably gets bigger and bolder when you select it. Maybe this title size and font matches this one and it just all kind of flows, but there is some redundancy here, and you probably might want this more like a tab look where it flows so that the color flows in there. That actually looks kind of cool right there. So that it's like, you want it to be intuitive, and now you have this kind of multi-dimensional flow, and well, it's based on previews. You have to decide what goes in the main view and what goes in the preview. But that's kind of a cool thing because, well, it can be trickier because then you have to like create that's, you know, you have to make decisions about what goes where. But frankly, you don't have to actually have a preview. It could just be the name. You could just have a list of things that like, you don't have to have this preview. It could just be the name alone. But then if you wanted to have a preview, is the thing, is like, and it could even be a jump menu. You could have like 3 sub things within that. Well, would that work? Maybe at that point, if you're going to click something that's a link inside of a sub thing, maybe Floyd Miles then becomes the main thing, and the sub thing gets like activated and previewed like this within it. That's kind of an interesting, it's like a contextual pairing where it's not just you're clicking on the sub thing. What am I even saying here? Well, let's take something like this. Well, there's 3 of those. And that could be, actually, looks, now that I'm saying it, if there's those 3 things there, why wouldn't you want to have that preview there? Well, have we clicked on it yet? Do we want to keep this nice and tight for the Albert Flores view? Do we want to see Floyd Miles' children? This is the preview thing. So now you have the decision to put it in the preview or not. Well, not if it does it automatically. Well, that could be called the table of contents. Just sucking out the title names and making them links. And so you could then just, in the preview, you just call this .toc, and it automatically renders the table of contents. Could write that right here. This .toc is, I can even hardly read this, but that could then render these 3 sections in the preview, so you don't actually have to like manually retype them or create, you know, links. It could just do it automatically for you, and then you could either do it or not do it. Now you have some control over it. That actually is, it's kind of the best way to do it, is you just have a place for it and you make it really easy to do. And yeah, you have to always do it. Well, you could automate it so that the preview defaults to, maybe there's a preview paragraph and you have to fill that in, and then it pulls it in automatically and then does a table of contents. I don't know. These content systems and how you want to like streamline your workflow, this is important. I think creating the right workflow is tricky, but definitely important. This looks pretty badass though, the way that this flows and kind of alternates between the lights and the darks. It's definitely not finished. There's a lot of wonky stuff. I'd have to like remake the whole thing from scratch and really think it through and try and document what's going on here. And where do we want these little arrow buttons? They probably shouldn't be floating in line with this title here. That was just a quick way I whipped it together. And you know, you could have like a sidebar of buttons on any of these things, but you kind of only need one. It could kind of just be like this floating thing that like follows. It's already breaking, but it could. What if we hold space bar? Whoa, that was really weird. Usually when you hold space bar, it while you're dragging something, it's bugging out. Okay, so it's supposed to hold it in the same container. I just thought maybe it would let me drag it around just to visualize. I could just do this. I could go alt drag here and then, Jesus, can I hold space bar now? Okay, now it's working. So the idea is like this could be a gear icon or whatever, but when you hovered a certain section, instead of having a button on all these, it would just appear. And maybe it follows your mouse, so as long as you're like in this margin area, when then the button appears and you can click on it kind of wherever your mouse is. It'd be really easy to hit. Or you have multiple buttons, but then you have to think about how tall the button bar is, and does each block have its own button bar, or is it like a moving button bar? There's a lot of people are trying to figure out this shit in a lot of different apps all over the world every day, and it's not easy. Definitely not easy, but I do think there are some, well, potentially modular like features that you could add to any one of the blocks, and kind of more systematic approaches to parents, children, layouts, previews, links, activating the things. So let's talk about activating for a second. When you click on any one of these things, like, okay, this arrow clearly would mean activate this thing, right? Well, like, should it go to this Albert Flores level, as I had, actually it's kind of this one right here, right? If we click into this thing, or is it better to keep Floyd Miles as like the main one, and this one is like the sub one? This one doesn't have any children, so technically those just wouldn't be there. But you could also have the view where it's essentially the Floyd Miles view, where this one, instead of this one being the subsection of Floyd Miles, this is Floyd Miles, and then has 3 of those things underneath. And the decision is essentially, do you ever, when you're clicking on something, do you always want to just activate it, or do you want to like show a contextual view of it? Now, if you click on it from here, you're actually clicking on it within the parent, actually within even the grandparent. Now, I don't think, so maybe going one level at a time is not a bad idea. It just essentially promotes Floyd Miles to be the active one. It could also then focus this one, so that, if this were a big long scrolly thing and you're selecting a thing that's down the page when you activate it. But I don't know, that could be weird, like activating the parent and scrolling to it, because it doesn't give you much more context or whatever. Although it could. Maybe these things each have their own previews. Is this a preview, or is this the full rendering? It's a good question. It looks pretty full. Like, there may or may not be any more to it, but generally speaking, well, do you have to decide for each page and subpage if you render the preview or a full view? Like, not all content might have a preview, and you might just want to render the whole damn thing. Sort of like with the tests. The tests, a lot of times you don't want to actually run them. You just want to render the name so that you can click on it and then run it if you want. So I think both ways are definitely viable, and kind of introduce like some confusion and complexity. But I don't know. I do think I'm heading in the right direction. This very simple kind of contextual multi-column content stuff is it's important to figure out. And I definitely like this multi-column thing here. This is pretty badass. Now we got 3 columns instead of just 2. And that allows you to see a lot more context. However, the preview issue is a thing. Also, so part of what I've thought about these redundant views, you have like the same title, potentially the same intro paragraph here, and then the same 3 sections. Like, this kind of almost reminds me of this. Like, this is the preview, a simplified preview of this, and this would then be the simplified preview of this. And in that way, you wouldn't really want to render the whole thing. This is like a much bigger rendering than this. This has like a lot of the paragraphs of text stripped out of it. It's not necessarily what you would want, so maybe you have to, like I was saying earlier, you have to decide how you want it to render, and so you have to pick which render function to use, and that would basically be methods that you define. That is honestly the best way I can think about it right now. So, well, what are these? Are these pages? Maybe that's or sections. Here, let me just grab this over here and Let's see if I can do one of these. Well, alright. My note that was up here is this recursive menu system. Okay, so pages, menus, cards, sections. They all kind of follow the same hierarchy. So maybe it's a tree. But isn't a tree just a list of lists? Yeah, so I do think the list class, I think I have some notes about it, although I don't really want to search through my notes right now because it's complicated, but I think I can just do at tree, or sorry, at list views, yeah. So, yep, the list view. This is pretty basic. I don't know why I copied my view class here. I think I was just thinking out loud with this. And why is this impartial? I think I was thinking does the list extend the view? Or the list is like, yeah, just a data container, and then the list has a list view is probably a better idea. I believe all of my views are kind of coupled to the class. Like, do we automatically render a list? And so we create the list view like in the list. Well, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that. You probably would need a render method, and that render method probably needs to know which list view to use. So in a sense, yeah, you kind of have to couple, at least choose which list view to use in the actual object, and you could override it. But I think I've figured out how to dynamically use, or basically use a property as a constructor so that it could be swapped out. So you basically say new, like, well, it's essentially this render is this dot, I don't know if you want to say this dot views dot push. I've done this before. It's actually not the worst way to have an update. This gets a little hairy because it can get confusing, but from a simplicity view, it's not a bad place to start. So this views push new. So it would be, it's really this dot constructor dot view, and you call that as a function, essentially a new. It's a, yeah, and then you pass in. You probably pass in list is this. That's kind of how that would work. And then somewhere else, you would say list dot view equals list view, and that gets imported somewhere. And then later, you can list dot view equals class list view extend, like, you'd really be like list view 2 extends list dot view. And you could just call it list view because this one's the one you're accessing is list.view. But you're extending the class and then also resetting it to this so that you're really like overriding it. Now this could break the whole list class, right? But if you wanted to do this site-wide, if other people weren't relying on the list view and you actually wanted to override it, then you could do this and it would automatically use the constructor. And I think you can, even if you extend the idea is, well, what if you extend list, like class my list extends list, and then my list dot view equals class my list view extends is list.view. Now this I think all would work, and you wouldn't have to, well, you just, when you go to render it, it's going to look at this constructor, which may be the list class or may be the this dot constructor is either this. Wait, what is it? Or is this the function that actually is the constructor? I forget. I think this actually points to the list, doesn't it? That seems a little confusing to me. I don't know if that always worked that way, but is this a function or is this the class? I feel like this is what I've done before, but now I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Anyway, something about looking up the specific view property, which is capital V. It's a specific class of the list, which points generally to the single view, but if you wanted to override either of those two classes, either the list class or the list view class, now you can do it, and it should hopefully work properly. That was like a big kind of like arm wrestle that I finally figured out, and it's not great. Like, it's kind of confusing, but it does do what you kind of set out to do, because otherwise you have to like figure out a different way to do it, but this is sort of the simplest way, and it does make some sense. So I could try and go work on all this. Like, is the list view actually what I need for the recursive menu system? Isn't all of this just a list of views? Yep, it is. Well, they're kind of just render functions too, in a way. Like, instead of being, I don't have to put all the content into like a list object, and frankly that's not necessarily most fitting with my framework. So like, do I want to have like a page extends list and then page, obviously it'd be a class and a new one, but a page dot add section kind of, or page dot add page sub page? Building that out in like a very structured list way is kind of bullshit. Like, you don't want to have to create everything separately and then add it in another line. Like, that's just, well, I mean, you could have a page helper function. You couldn't have your page called page. It'd have to be called like p or something, but it could be p dot add, and you could new page, have some quick easy one-liner if that's the problem. But still, just calling add to me just feels like, function capturing is way more elegant. And no, I mean, adding properties isn't bad. You could potentially have it sort of like an append. Page dot add could really be basically like the append that I have for views, but you could add a prop and whatever. Can you add anything to a list? I haven't really thought through the list class in a while in terms of all the different things that it could be and how it would look. I have thought that it could just be kind of like a generic wrapper for objects and arrays, and so it could sort of just be either of them. That's maybe not a good idea, because then you're never sure which one it is, and then certain methods can work better on certain things. But, well, if an object can always have a certain list of values that essentially just collapse that it ignores the property names, and then it's just working on only the values, it could easily do that in order to mimic an array. So just because it has property names doesn't mean it works terribly differently. But I don't know, you don't always necessarily want to iterate over all the properties like an array, or for objects. Maybe you just want an object container, but then you wouldn't have to call the iterators. You could just ignore that part of it. You also might want to create subsets of properties so that like you actually do iterate over only some of the properties. So you have like certain meta properties, but when you do a list.each, only some of those properties get iterated over. So you could essentially just override the each method. I haven't really thought this through in a while. And this is, again, it's way over my kind of current capacity right now. It's like, I know it's important. I felt like the list class could be kind of the basis for even a view class, more of a persistent view class, where you could create any kind of web content via these lists. And so I do think it's really important. I just don't know if I can spin my wheels working on this right now because I don't even have a working website. Oftentimes when I do go digging on these things, I can spend hours kind of pre-planning and arriving at all kinds of deep decisions that, I don't know, maybe life is leading me through some of these things that need to be decided, and maybe I should take the opportunity to study it and try and figure it out, but I feel like I'm dying. I mean, I feel like my brain is hardly working. I was just about to take a sip of coffee to try and, but I remembered that the last sip was a little too harsh, and I think I'm going for water now. And yeah, so what do we do here, Michael? Let's see. Menus. Hierarchical menus should, if ever you need like parents and children, essentially, that is sort of the domain of this list thing. But do we want to have to add? Well, so the list could capture stuff. In fact, I was thinking that somewhere, I thought it was somewhere recently, something about, well, so actions, yeah, actions could capture other actions for logging purposes, but asynchronous code is not capturable per se. I haven't really tackled that one yet. Fuck, man. I want to get this hierarchical content working. I really do, like nested tests. And so could tests extend lists? And well, and so I've gone back and forth between tests. Well, let's just make a section here. Tests. Test versus tests. The tests class was for more like a collection of tests or a test suite where you have a set of methods that can be used within your tests, and you can apply the test suite to another class or input or whatever. And so that's a good idea. And so the tests class could be a list of tests. Similarly, a tab system could be a list of tabs. A page system could be a list of pages. A page could be a list of content sections. It sort of is, but like, all right, so far, and maybe this is an important distinction, so far my views just collect like DOM elements and put them on the screen. It's not like creating some sort of object hierarchy. So like the view instances connect to the DOM and everything is in the proper place, but I don't know, do the views know their parent view? I think they actually do. Well, so the views have a parent? I think it does. Do they have a list of children? This I don't think they do, because Let me look at my code real quick. I don't think I ever set up the... God, I forget which one of these is the main... I think this one's the main framework here that I want to be working with. View. So it's really an append. So I'm really just setting the parent to this. And then just chucking it in there. I'm not creating an array of children as far as I know. Essentially I have a hierarchy, so that creates like, all right, let's make a call out here. Currently view, so class view creates a parent property and sort of has that hierarchy. I don't think I rely on that, but does not store children. And I've thought about doing this. I've thought about, so the DOM is an arbitrarily complex tree, and the views do store their parent when they get added, but I haven't relied on this property. I don't remember. Maybe I have, because it probably works pretty well, but I can't recall needing to like loop through the view children. I wouldn't necessarily trust that the view is always up to date, like always synchronized, because there's like two different... Whoa. Control Shift Z, enter. I wouldn't rely on the view DOM synchronization. Like generally, I'm creating all the DOM, and there's nothing else, and so they're actually missing probably like 99.999% of the time, only if something strange happened. But like, or if I start doing something strange, maybe. Like right now there's well, it's sort of like the question is, does the view.children match the DOM, so the view.l.children? And these aren't even the right syntax for that, but it's essentially two collections or arrays or whatever of child elements. Do they stay in sync? I don't even have the children property right now. Could a view be a list? This adds a bunch of complexity to it, and it doesn't really need that most of the time because it works pretty well right now. And so if I were to go and restructure my view class, so instead of extending the base class, it's extending the list class, just so that I could have this potential in the future of being able to like do some more advanced shit with the views, which I might want to, but it probably should be a separate view class. Like, but then you can't do like multiple inheritance. So if class view extends base, and this is the base view class, and then we want like class list view list, I don't know, like just adding list. You can't mix in list functionality. So like if we had class list extends base, is kind of what I was thinking. It's like its own thing, and extends view and list, like womp womp. Is that a womp? Can't do it, and there are sort of reasons why, but multiple inheritance is probably a useful idea also. It's just, yeah, I guess these like kind of deep. Well, what exactly is the thing that I'm missing? Like to get hierarchical content flowing, what is missing? I mean, they're essentially tabs, right? They're essentially tabs. Yeah, they are. Now this one is. It's sort of like the tab is the content. The tab is the preview content, and the link and the button link that activates the next column. Right, that is kind of the thing that I'm thinking here. Activating column. Let's think about activating columns for a second. On my giant monitor, I have plenty of space to just put a bunch of columns. If we set this to hug width and then we duplicate it, okay, now we get this idea. And just to give it some rhythm, like maybe something within Floyd Miles has a lot of notes to it or whatever. Now you can have these like deeply nested areas, but am I gonna, right now I have to write this all out with actual code, and that's actually maybe not even that hard because each one of these can be a file, and then, or even a function or whatever, but like, and they can pull in other things and generate lots of content just by like looping or whatever. And so sometimes you might want to have these very structured areas to kind of automate previews of things. Well, and create them so that they're then like something you can reference back to. And so whether it's manual or automated or whatever, I do think having deeply nested content like this is a good idea. So what I'm kind of sensing here is this this and this. It's doesn't completely fix it, but and then maybe this doesn't need to be there at that point because I have it set to auto and it should be whatever. So but so the general gist of what's going on here is that the background color alternates, and so on a white background you can't see white blocks, and on a gray background like you can, but then like maybe if these two, if this color and this color are the same, then you couldn't see this gray color on this background, and so you sort of just making a table with alternating colors, but in like a second dimension. Whoops. So like sometimes you'll see a table, let's shift A this and duplicate and make this different color, and then duplicate, move it down, and then we could shift enter, control D, and then move these all down, I think is what we want there. There we go. So it's just like a zebra stripe, alternating colors, just a way to have some variation on background color from row to row. And now we're doing it with columns and nested content and going from white to gray back to white, and you could just go back and forth endlessly. Now the real trick here is how do you manage these columns? Like how many can they get, and what happens when it just keeps going? Actually, I think we might want to duplicate all three of these. Let's see what happens there. Hit right and right again. Actually, we want to get rid of this one. Boom. Okay, now this is a little iffy. Maybe isn't that what this was a second ago? Okay. Wait, no, because to have this look right, we kind of need this, but maybe we just need that padding on there. Can we? I don't know what I'm actually. Can this go right align? No, there. That looks kind of what I'm thinking. It's just trying to like keep the flow so that you kind of see what is what and how it connects back to the parent. And then at any point, like if these were nested properly, each column could have a little close button in the top corner. So if you close this thing out, it just deactivates the selection from the parent, and the whole tree just kind of collapses away, and you go back to the first thing that you were working with. And in a very real sense, that's like the best workspace and the best workflow. You get to dig deep, you get to come back up, you get to like have some context to where you started and where you're going. And now one kind of question is well, it probably would save your tree. So if you dug deep and you went all the way down here and then you closed, well, if you close this one, then logically it just, I don't know, do you go back to the home page or something? But if you close this one, Floyd Miles, then it would deactivate this. It would go back to the white color and just be as if you had just arrived at Albert Flores. Essentially, it's just activating Albert Flores. This one isn't highlighted anymore, or maybe it is. Maybe it's still selected or something, so it's half activated or half highlighted. I don't know. We can figure that out. But what I was thinking is this whole tree, boom, 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 boom. All four of these blocks disappear then because they're sub-context, they're contextually only relevant to this thing that was just closed. And then if you clicked it again to activate it, it probably would, instead of re-rendering it, maybe it just reactivates it. It's already rendered. And then by doing that, it brings you back to your kind of context that you were just in. It's all open. Now, this is a very temporary thing because it's based on the DOM kind of lazy rendering these things. It's not like it would persist from session or even page reload to page reload after you close it out, unless you wanted it to, and that would be actually maybe useful, but maybe not. I don't know. Would you always want to remember that this one is that you were last on the third thing? Maybe it's actually the right idea, and so it kind of reloads exactly where you were all the way to the end until you close them out. And maybe you just close this top one and then like you just close as much as you want. That's probably the way to do it. But then the whole like saving your context across page loads, that would take a lot more work because you'd have to like save all the states. You could have potentially any one activated and then you'd have to save the active state, and that I'm not going to think about right now. But the alternating kind of like columns is actually kind of sweet, and the size could be exactly the same. These got a little smaller because I thought maybe that's what I wanted, and maybe side context or like smaller columns isn't bad. Maybe they all are then smaller. I don't know. Or maybe they're just all the exact same size and it just kind of repeats the same type. That's probably way easier. And so you would have a little bit of like, you wouldn't have as much hierarchy, like at least from here to here. These would be exactly the same typographic widths and sets and whatever, but I think that could be easy starting point. So, all right, so as this grows sideways, do we get a horizontal scroll bar? How does this work on my laptop or a 1920 screen versus my giant screen? I haven't really thought this through, and I haven't really figured this out in Figma where I can move everything around real freely. It is kind of it's a moving target for sure. You have different resolutions to hit. You have different types of widths of things, and so it's not always going to be the same. You can definitely just center the damn thing, and you definitely can have a horizontal scroll bar. It's not necessarily the worst thing to have, but having both vertically and like vertical scroll bar and side scroll, I almost think I almost think that's the wrong way to go, to have a single, like this frame here where like this div that were side scrollable and vertically scrollable. Maybe that's not the right way to do it. Maybe having each one of these being independently scrollable is a better way. I kind of think that's the way to go, but I'm not really getting a lot of clarity on this issue right now. I could just create these kind of alternating columns and try and whip that together and see how that goes, but I definitely want to think this through for a second. I think the previewing here is a little, I don't know, that's a pretty hard preview, but maybe there's different levels of previews. I don't know. Like if you embedded this whole page into another page, would it just be these like 4 words or 4 names or titles or whatever? Maybe, but that's a pretty sparse preview. And so maybe this is more than just the TOC method. Maybe the TOC can be the actual preview in some cases, where instead of calling preview, you just call TOC directly. Still not 100% sure on that. I think these are things we've got to figure out, though, because, well, I'm going to try and I want to be able to start writing some tests, start documenting all the different UX things, and in a way where it's acceptable, like I know where things go and how the layout works. The visual part, I think this is pretty decent. Getting this tabby like flow, the side flow here, to just kind of seamlessly flow into the next thing. It looks actually pretty sweet. If there were a scroll bar there, it would interrupt it and look less sweet, much less sweet, because, well, it just would, and it wouldn't be as obvious that it was like that this thing is now activated and it's kind of flowing into this thing. And also just scroll position wise, this is another thing that, like, as you scroll the page, does the sidebar like stick? A lot of times it does, and a lot of times that's kind of what you want, so that you can still use the left sidebar navigation as you're scrolling through. But if you were, for example, to like activate Floyd Miles and then scroll up, as you see, like the continuity of the tab disappears as you would scroll this independently. And then would you like automatically close that sidebar? Well, if you then click on another section, I think you definitely have to close this. You don't have to like delete the rendering. You can reuse it if you want to switch back later, but I do think clicking on any other section would, I mean, you don't want to render it on top and just keep them all open and have to manually close them all. I think you probably want to deactivate this. Is it like closing it? Maybe. Probably is. You'd probably want any videos to stop playing automatically. That's kind of one thing I was just thinking that I haven't really worked with. But if there was an embedded video in there and you click on another section, you don't want it continuing to play in the background. Well, so what kind of content structure is this? The way the tabs work is like, yeah, you have essentially a series of so sort of like the tab system was weird. It was well, I wouldn't say weird, but tricky. Let's see if I can. I don't know why I'm feeling like a stroke that's dashed, stroke, dynamic, brush, basic. What the fuck are these? Dynamic? Whoa. Frequency with wiggle? I've never seen this before. It's kind of crazy. Let's just jack this up so we can actually see it. Okay, so this was like a tab, and we had like a tabs system that this isn't in there properly, but it's covering it. That's not what we wanted to do. Is this inside of that one? I don't think it is. This one wants to go inside of here. Okay, so this is like the tab system. Maybe a section works well for this one. Let's see what the section looks like, because I actually kind of want the frame label for this little bit. Was it Shift S? How did I remember that? Tab system. And the tab had, well, so it's this collection of tabs, and for each one, I think I called them tabbies, or at least maybe they're just called tabs, but let's call it a tabby for now, because it's the little, actually we can kind of draw this out. This is the little tab part, and then I'm going to draw it a little bit below here and call this content. It's like the page area. But the way this tab system worked is that you had this array of tabs. No, these are not inside of that one. Let's drag them out, drag them back in. Well, so I think this is evident even though we lost the labels, that that's the tabby and the content. And then you'd have like tab 2 and whoops, and tab 3. And so the tabs had like an array of tabs, but like there's actually there's sort of two different arrays. There's an array of tabbies and there's an array of content things. And more or less, like when you'd click, this is like the link that goes above the, you know, tab section. So you'd have like this one and this one and this one up here. And then one of them would render, whichever one was activated. And when you click on this one, it would, I think I would say like deactivate this tab system, essentially, or like, if you called each tab, like it's more of like the system of the tabby, the link, and the content, but it's sort of a pair that are two separate views that are like not actually in a group. Like this isn't the tab thing isn't a view, it's more of just like this logical pairing relationship between these two. And I don't actually remember, I think I've done this a number of times and structured the classes and the data differently, and it's not really so important how you get set up exactly, like what you call everything and the parent-child or collection orient, you know, or the grouping, I guess, like the names of the classes and whatnot could vary. But when you click on one of the links, it would have to activate the proper corresponding content and deactivate the previous one. You wouldn't want them both viewable at once. And there's different ways to do that, even with like the CSS, by like removing a class or whatever. But yeah, I do think a deactivate function was necessary there. So I've gotten tabs to work before. That's definitely what would sort of be in order here to get these sections to flow. But one of the things I'm kind of struggling with here is the possibility for infinite columns and the management of those columns. So as you start digging through these kind of things, there's sort of sections, right? Like title and content, and sections with previews. So like section is like title, writing this down just to content, and then maybe a preview. It's kind of the thing here, right? Like you kind of have to have, well, you don't have to, but you'd probably want to think through what you see on the left and what you see on the right when this is like a split view. That's kind of what it is, right? A split view section. And it could be literally just a preview, kind of automated preview. You could have like maybe the preview runs here and here. Maybe this is the preview, just a part of the thing, which is like above the sections. And then the TOC represents the sections on the actual preview here. So maybe this would have to be called like, maybe it's just ATF or something, some sort of like preview. I don't know. You gotta think up through all of the different function names and how you're gonna call what from where. Fuck, man, I'm getting fuzzy brained and Part of me thinks like I need to just start coding this out and testing it in the browser so that I can play with the code more and less just exploring the ideas. However, obviously once I start creating a bunch of columns, like how do I... Using my mouse wheel to side scroll is possible, but like that's just not the thing I want to do right now. But maybe once I get it up there and deal with things one step at a time, there's certainly a lot of work I could do just to get this barely functioning. I'd rather like think it all through and know that I can do it than set off and figure out that like it's just not going to work properly because of whatever. All right, so with these columns, let's say does it get centered? It probably should be in a certain sense. Maybe it doesn't really matter. If the content is so much smaller than the... I don't know why this isn't... Okay. If the content is so much smaller than the window, it probably should be centered and or scaled. I think this is getting a little too complex. Let's forget scaling it. Should it center itself or should it just be left aligned? I think maybe left aligned is potentially better. But then what controls the width here? Then I would have to set like a max width for each column. Maybe that's not a bad idea. And maybe that could be variable based on the size of the monitor, essentially, the breakpoints. So that on a bigger monitor, the columns generally take up a little bit more space. Maybe even set the font size bigger. I mean, that would make sense, obviously. I do think these one-word test things, so let's think this through, okay? These one-word tests seem like they would be one-word previews, right? Like this tree could be pretty useful, and like these here are kind of a similar idea. And what I was going to do is just kind of clean up the look of it, but I guess what I'm thinking is, could I create essentially what I'm doing now, or what I have done in a better way? It's like the sub items. What I'm feeling is just a list, and this one's like just very subtly indented, although it is definitely a kind of hierarchy up there. I don't think that's really so important, but it's like the list and the sub items, and the one that I created over here is just this massive thing, and the preview is so potentially big. It's like a full column width, and it has the name up here. It does just have names here. These are kind of one-liners, and frankly, these could be more like these name thingies. I'm not going to get them to match up properly if I change them, but it's like if you forget the paragraph thing above and it's just a list of things, it's kind of what I'm getting at here. Would I need to have that whole TOC or whatever system? Okay, the only way to automatically do a TOC function is if these sections were sort of captured properly. This is absolutely true. And I don't know... to do the TOC, we need to auto capture sections, essentially, right? Like, more or less in a section name, So this is sort of like these test blocks, and just do a little arrow function here to create the section, and we have the section name, so that could actually render automatically. We wouldn't need to rewrite that, and then it's just like anything goes here. But what if you have the section in here? So here now we have the subsection, and it's recursive. So this is sort of how the tests go. And but what's the auto capturing? Well, it's essentially the section could then be kind of like a list, and maybe it's just a view. I don't know. Let's see. Just keep going right here. More or less, the section here is a function. The section here is just a section, and it's a little different. The section dot children would be an array of sections, or so that section dot POC list of child sections. That's kind of the thing I'm thinking. And then when this renders here, well, it kind of depends on where are we. Are we in like a page, or are we rendering like tabs? I mean, we kind of have to decide like the very first column. It's like, what is it? Where is it? Whatever. In this case, it's potentially a root page named Albert Flores, or is this like a root page with like a big like separate page name that's like kind of even bigger than the whole thing, where maybe these are, you know, like people, and here's all the people: Albert Flores, Ronald Richards, etc. And then there's a little tabby thing for each one of them, and it can get as deep as it wants. It's not a bad way to go. And I'm kind of feeling like, well, what if you wanted this to be bigger or multi-column, where each kind of page for each person doesn't necessarily have to be just one column? This is like 1,000 pixels. It's a pretty big column. It does kind of keep it mobile friendly, which is one of the advantages to it, but there's really no reason why it couldn't be like more of a dashboard or workspace, where each one of these things then kind of opens up more of like a sidebar with like a big space underneath. All right, so if I had a consistent hierarchy, and frankly, if that made more sense, like you know, the names made sense to me. I don't really want to use like family member names to build a hierarchy of like grandparents and children and grandchildren and whatever, although that's kind of what I was just thinking. Is there another good, you know, let's ask the computer, chat GPT, for design purposes, if I wanted some dummy data for dummy strings for a hierarchy of menus, what are some good example hierarchies? I think I should know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I mean, that's not bad. Settings with 4 things and 3 things each. So any of those would work, I think. Ooh, a file manager. specific. Why are they different for mobile? Shouldn't it be the same items? Well, on small screens and touch interfaces, they usually have hamburger menus. Wow, it's got like an actual menu character in there. That's crazy. Hidden side panel that slides out, bottom navigation. But generally, it's the same types of things. Expandable lists. But yeah, I mean, these things do need to be mobile friendly, and so this is. I don't know why it's so tricky, but maybe it's because I don't have a specific set of things. Now, like the main set of things, like home and about or whatever. Like a lot of pages have just kind of like these very top level. If you only had 5 things on your entire site, or 3 things even, what would they be? I'm not quite there yet, because there's just a lot of things that I want to kind of work with before I start working towards, you know, finalizing my navigation. But I don't know. Can we just copy this? Or how about I just print screen it? Am I going to have to type them all out? Probably, but I don't think there's really a better way. So let's go with this one for now. It really doesn't matter, but I just want to like a consistent thing to kind of chuck it around, I guess. Is this... Should I just keep going sideways, or should I come back over here? I don't know. Alright, let's get something like this maybe to start with. Let's just rebuild this whole damn thing. We're going to go with, actually, settings is so big, we're going to go with settings up here, and then profile, and so we only have 3 levels here. Edit profile, change password. This is probably boring to watch, but I'm sure this whole frickin' video is boring to watch. And then this would be notifications, and have no preview up here. This would be display, have no preview up here, and this would be about, and also have no preview. And this would be like K2, much bigger, maybe even black. That looks pretty sweet. So that's cool. I'm digging this so far. Could slap this bitch right in the mouth. We could... What is this? I don't know, man. Let's try and put this in here, but let's just drag and drop and see what happens. Yeah, it gets all jacked up. How about we shift A this? No, wait, what just happened there? If I click this and this, and I shift A them, shouldn't it put them in one block together? That's what I thought, but alright. Now in here, I think we want this BG color. We're gonna break this and go not quite white, because we want this to be a unique color in case I need to change that in a minute. We want all of this, I think it's this black here. Should also probably be the exact same color. This white is then just going to be like really subtle. And that's pretty much it, right? I mean, it definitely looks different once it's in the flow with the header and whatnot. And in terms of like the hierarchy and all the things, like I guess there should be a default tab, and then you can see the main things within it. I mean, I think this is kind of the right idea. Do we just then create, let's just delete these for now. Let's create a frame in here. All right, I see what's happening. This needs to be hug. No, it can be fill, but this whole thing needs to be hug. There, I think that works as it should. This is going to be white, but did we say this was 10%? That's interesting. I don't know if that will work. Like recursively, might get too bright, but let's go with this for a second, and then just zero out the spacing. And these are pretty small. These are frames, right? Yeah. The this one could maybe just go to 15. But we're kind of not there yet. We need to get some content. What was this, 800? Whoops. Alright, so this is now like kind of a nice little browser for deeply nested hierarchical things, right? Can we, I feel like that's a little tight there, and maybe a little more bottom padding. Okay, and this is really small. Is this size 20? 16. Whew. But I guess that's what I was going for. Is this 20? This is 24, and that's 16. It's pretty tiny, but I don't necessarily mind it. I guess we're just going to stick with it for a second. The problem here is what goes in here. Is it really only one 800 column here, or could we, for example, have the alternative would be like, well, let's just zero all this out, and maybe we just get rid of these for now, and maybe we Control Shift G this. No, because that's got the proper background, but what's going on here? Wait, what is this one? It's the whole thing. This is the footer. I should just call this footer. Geez. Footer. Footer. I don't fucking care. Alright, so the settings thing, it's like the page title. And it's the only thing, which kind of feels like it should just be this thing here. But maybe somehow this is like not actually the root thing, or even settings for this thing, for example. So this could be very contextual, so actually let's run with that. Kind of like, you don't have to always follow the exact same rules, right? Like if it works, if it seems to work, then why not? Now this left and right padding should just equal this one, which is out equal there, and so there we go. But what I was going to do is have this one be like more of a sidebar like thing, and so in fact this needs to be quite a bit different in terms of the layout. This is set to fill. Let's set this to hug. This top and bottom padding is, should we zero all this out for now? Left align, and then this one, I think we might need to frame this, and then that one becomes a little bit bigger. We do want it to be auto layout, but still bigger manually, and then the right align this thing. And then, yeah, so actually we do want the top and bottom padding, I think, but actually no, we don't, because we want it on either one of these. So this is the main, and this is the sidebar, and this is like just sidebar inner, essentially, I think, is kind of how I'm thinking this through. And we kind of just want this lined up generally, so it is really weird layout. It's not exactly what I'm thinking or like feeling is like the best thing here, but this sidebar can have the background color, which I think we're gonna go darker on here. So that's black 10%. I think we then, this clashes here. I don't really know the right feeling I'm looking for here in terms of how to get that to flow. Like, this is definitely just too jarring. This doesn't look enough like a overlay that's substantially different, and it almost looks like it's trying to interact, but it's not. This one could have a drop shadow that gets blurred up. I can definitely see it there, but it could be stronger. I don't know. I don't actually know if that's a good idea. Maybe a little bit. But then this one, I don't know, should this be something different? This is sort of an adaptive like highlight here. It looks pretty strong, but is this the right kind of coloring? Or do we even need, maybe it's just, this is more of like a main sidebar, like a navigational, and this thing seems like it should be on top of that thing, right? And even darker? Jeez, so, well, can we add one of these and crank it way up and then put it on top? So I think we render first on top, so last is underneath, and therefore it's just not going to work unless we like redo these two. You know, we group these two together and say like bottom, and then now it looks like it's more on top. I could put like an actual, oh, it has a drop shadow, but it's hardly visible. Crank it up, not that much. Blur down, pull it down more. It doesn't have to have this, and it's kind of just also dark and hard to see, but I think that looks a little better. But I'm not sure if it's good enough. Well, also just how it's going to work in general, but activating these background areas, there's definitely something funky going on here with the shadow, and just like, it's not clear. My eyes are kind of struggling to even see, wait, what am I looking at here? Are these different materials? Is this one material? There is a shadow, but it's kind of blurry, and it's not terrible. I don't know if, I mean, this could be black and go darker. Maybe that's the right way. I don't know if this one shouldn't be so dark then. If it goes too light, then it's not right. If it goes too dark, then I don't know, man. This is tough. It's like very sensitive colorations here. I don't know. And it kind of seems like it's shifting hue a little bit. I know it's not supposed to, but could be my monitor. Not sure if this one's any better than the one above. It's a little bit more confusing, actually. But the point is, like, it's more of a hard sidebar rather than like this flowy thing. Oh, and then, okay, so actually, what I was kind of thinking, this could flow. This could flow into that. How would that work? Well, I don't actually know. I'd have to match the colors and get rid of the thing. All right, so let's duplicate this. And then we get rid of the effect, and then we take this, and so this one is background plus 20% black. So this one would be the BG color plus 20% black, exact same color. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. It's like this little notch. Take a bite out of the thing. Now, in terms of a main layout, like the actual kind of sidebar look that we're going for here, I don't know if I like that. It's like very kind of chunky, and it could be fixed up a bit, but I don't know if the whole flow thing works as well in this case. But that was kind of what I was going for originally when I was kind of thinking about this and thinking like, okay, this is more of like a activated on top of this background kind of a effect, and this is more like a well inside of the thing. And then you could even have something like this inside of there. Why isn't that going to work properly? There is no frame next to this. So can we make one? And then this goes sideways, and then over here, and then 0 spacing, fill width, probably a hug height, but let's throw this in there first. And then I don't know what this is gonna do actually. And this is, can we, this would be auto layout, and then fill width, hug contents, add padding, this one would be fill height, and then is it supposed to be, well, so if we just, can this whole bottom thing be fill height? It's not really what we want. We actually more want it hug, but right now it's a little confusing. And if we duplicate these, they kind of go the wrong way. If we duplicate this and Shift A and switch this down, I just kind of want to get the sense of growing content and make sure the layout is right. Height, hug, but something's not right here. I don't even know what all these containers are. This is, all right, so main, sidebar, and then like, let's just call this the well, and this is like content maybe. The well has padding. Does the well have height, hug? But the content must not have height, hug. Okay. And now it pushes this sidebar way down because it's kind of aligned that way. I think keeping it more to the top is kind of cool. And now that's an interesting little notchery. There's a notch here and a notch there, and if they were different it could look kind of cool. Definitely putting it in the frame, like with the header and footer on there. But man, there's just so many variables and variations to the coloring and the structure. How many things? How deep are they? Are you doing previews? Are the columns expanding? Like, how far can you go, and how do you close things and rearrange everything? This is not an easy task that I'm trying to wrap my head around right now. And I wish I could just come up with a simple tree UI, but I've been tossing these ideas around like for a long time, and I just I don't know what to think. I'm sure there's people who are better at this than I am, and maybe I could hire somebody, but how much would that cost? How long would it take them? And what kind of results do they give me? And are their layouts any less broken than mine? If I start trying to play with it, is it going to be, well, sometimes it's hard to get shit working, but sometimes there's obviously better things you can do. And man, I have literally just been spinning my wheels. I mean, I'm building cool shit, but it's not really the clarity to kind of figure out where I'm actually trying to go with this. I'm trying to create a web system that works properly. It's really all that it is. So the design thing here, you kind of just, maybe you just forget about what's inside of it, and it's just more like, well, what does this one look like? And the alignment kind of matters. This one's got this really strange this is like right aligned, but I don't know, this one kind of just seems pretty simple and easy. Isn't this way simpler and easier than trying to do a hard sidebar? Definitely seems so. We do have kind of the connective thing going on. We could potentially get, so I don't know if I can get this to flow properly. Watch this. So if we take any one of these and put it in here, it's not, even though it's got the same colorization, it's not, well, all I really have to do is do an eyedropper on it there. Now it computes it into, so if an adaptive thing, it actually just hard codes the color. Okay, so I could get that to flow. That's kind of the tree system that I'm looking for. And I don't know if there's a lot of considerations to getting this to be mobile friendly, or let's just say responsive. So let me think this through kind of just with some rectangles. As we throw this out, well, one question would be, what happens when the thing gets kind of to the end of your monitor space? It just like it just chops it all off. That's kind of what it's doing here. I mean, the window, you can't get your monitor to get any bigger. So, well, it could start sliding sideways, essentially. To do that would be kind of tricky. I don't think there's any CSS layout that's going to do that for you automatically, where, well, I mean, maybe it's just a side scroll. Maybe that's literally all that you're doing, is because the area gets too big, it normally puts a scroll bar on there, and maybe you just, every time you activate or deactivate something, you scroll hard right so that it like auto, well, I don't know, that could be weird. Would you automatically want to scroll all the way to the right? Probably not all the time. But maybe if you activate something, no, but see, even in that case, especially if you can close shit down and then reopen stuff, and it like launches 12 new columns, or it's really 12 old columns, but if you had a bunch of columns open and you click on something to open it, you probably wouldn't want your screen jumping around more, really any. Like, it should probably keep the left scroll intact and just put a big scroll bar on there, and then you could manually scroll around. That's actually maybe doing nothing is the best thing here. Maybe you don't have to worry so much about managing the side scroll position. That should actually probably work pretty well, I think. All right, and then let's think about vertical scroll. So obviously these are going to be of all different sizes. And as you like pull these things out, and it makes the, well, it's sort of just like loading a page that's got like a lot of content to it. It just makes the window have a bigger scroll bar, which it may already have or may not, but you probably want to force the thing to. And so the whole website just gets bigger, and so that should just happen pretty naturally, right? Okay, so here's the thing. The independent scrolling columns, I think, is important. So let's go back over to this one where we actually have some content and think about this. So we kind of want these to all be sticky. That's what we want. Well, sticky, but sort of sticky, but independently scrollable. If it's short enough, it doesn't need to scroll any, but if it's long, then maybe it's either sticky or kind of fuck, man, I'm trying to think through all the different like sidebar kind of layouts where you have fixed and you have like relative and static, but I think it's really fixed or absolute. Fixed is going to be fixed to the screen, where absolute is going to be fixed to the parent. Why do these need to be independently scrollable? Well, it's because if you're trying to read this one and you want to keep, this Floyd Miles on your screen here, but then you're like, wait, what was down here? You don't want to lose your context on your second column or any column by scrolling. If the whole thing is linked, then all you can do is like scroll the whole thing together. And that's actually not necessarily a huge problem, but so maybe again, doing nothing is better. But I do think that at some point having scrollable columns would be better. Well, so fuck, man. Maybe it's as easy as just creating a simple, a couple simple components, and then just generating stuff from code, and maybe it's not so hard. Like one component is like a page with a preview, and the preview is the table of contents. Can this little page preview thing here run anywhere? Like if you just put this in the flow of another document somewhere, it's not a bad idea. Like if you're going to embed it, you could embed the whole damn thing, but embedding a big, obviously embedding this whole thing somewhere is massive, and embedding a tiny little table of contents for that thing makes a lot more sense. You also might want to just inline it, where you have different forms for the same thing. So like an inline block would be a single line. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like life is trying to kill me right now, and it doesn't feel good. I'm just stretched so thin, and don't really feel like trying to do this in code right now, because it's just not very clear to me what's going on. And I don't think, at this point, I'm not sure if it's going to get any clearer. I feel like I'm close to actually like doing something with it, but it's also just kind of, well, let's not give up. Maybe I'm closer than I think. So what kind of components do I need? I need, what do I call this? A page? What does the page do? Let's make a note, because I did have a page class. Let's make a new note for the page class. Before, the page was basically like activate, deactivate, which is essentially adding, removing classes, but maybe showing, hiding, rendering the page contents. Sometimes routing, but I don't think we're doing that right now. Yeah, activating, deactivating was a big part of it. The pager, what was the pager thing? The pager was just, a list of pages and kept track of the active page. So when you try to pay, let's just call it other page.activate, the system is able to current, well, it's basically like pager.current page.deactivate. That's pretty much all it was. It's just sort of like the tabs, very similar thing. I was working on both of those around the same time, and got that working for the most part. And so, but the page is like more or less just a style, a white background. Not all pages need a white background, clearly, and it might change. So that's, light versus dark theme. Haven't really tried to implement that, but there is some styling element, I guess, to the page. It's more or less just, background, but like, yeah, I mean, it's really a container with very minimal styling. There's not much to that part of it. But how about the preview part? Preview, TOC, inline, intro paragraph. I don't know, like sub page, or it's really subsections. And in a sense, why is a page any different than a section? Because that's kind of the gist of what I was feeling. Now, maybe until I get kind of more of a dynamic system where it can... Well, is there a difference between a page and a section? I'm not sure. If I put this right here and I focus off, it's still sort of visible on my other screen. Oh, we lost it. Alright, so why can't I guess it's just going full like right here. Okay, so I can envision the page and the section being the exact same thing. Sort of like any bullet point. This could be its own page. In some apps you can kind of do that. I think it's workflow, where each bullet kind of becomes its own page. And so there's really not much difference between a page and a bullet and a line of text and a heading and whatever. They're all just kind of like styled slightly differently is really what it comes down to. Although there could be some sort of functional differences also, like a title can have, or a heading can have like content kind of paired with it to make a section. And a section doesn't necessarily need to have a separate background color and be like a distinct thing. The section could be, more of an invisible thing that's just like the title and contents without any sort of styling to it, and then the place to... But then does a page need a section to have like a title? No, like the page has a title. Well, I should write that down. Title. What is going on here? Ask AI dash space title. Sections. So page versus sections. It's like style versus structure. Pages could become sections. Sections could become pages. If both pages and sections have title, does it matter? But what's the actual difference between a page and a section? Sort of just one's a parent and one's a child, and then the look is potentially a little bit different. Maybe they're all pages. Maybe it's just each block is sort of a page, and God damn it, man. This is some abstract bullshit. I feel like maybe I should go get some fast food. Maybe that'll make me feel better. Fucking hell, man. I hate my life sometimes. Got a really bad headache. Wanted to make some progress. Wasn't really feeling like working on anything today, but I made my coffee, took my gummy, and kind of started flowing for a few minutes. And I'm definitely kind of leaning into the right direction again, but well, let's zoom out and see what we've done today. This was more just an import. I didn't really do that. I did kind of make this test block thing. I mean, those could kind of go into one of these, right? Like, horizontal kind of content, maybe I should stay away from it. It's just I really want to get a website that utilizes my big screen. It's mostly just for my own sake, like, so I can create kind of workspaces that are properly formatted for my screen, and well, so that I can kind of like put shit in the right spot. But this is proving to be way more difficult than I thought. In fact, as I'm thinking it through, it's like, well, just having one accordion type shit that folds out into like all this stuff, especially with random sizes and stuff. I mean, this is a very unique case where it's like, of all the things you click on here, you click on this one, and this one is this big, and this one has something that's this big, and this one has, I mean, this is some highly nested, deeply nested shit, and most of the content's not going to be that deeply nested. It's going to be like one or two, maybe I get to the second column, and then, well, so what does that look like? Let's duplicate this, and then just kind of delete these maybe. This looks a little strange. Let's just delete this one. And these. And if it's all left aligned, I mean, it's kind of strange. I think this is huge. It's 6,000 pixels, and my monitor is only like 3,400 here. But if we go to 0 zoom or 100% zoom, it's not terrible. It looks kind of nice, actually. But I don't know if this is like, is this getting to it? I can check the hues on these things. What's the hue on this one? Wait, did it say when I hovered it? HSB 255, 253, 251. It is rehuing it. Those motherfuckers. Adding black or white should not rehue. So hue is this guy. Everybody meet hue. And adding black or white to this thing should not change the hue. It should change the brightness. Up or down in here from lighter to darker. That's what black and white. Adding black and white should do. Maybe a little saturation drifting could be, I don't know which way, would black or white make it more or less saturated? I don't think it should change saturation. I think it should just change brightness. But clearly, that's what I was feeling earlier as I was messing with these, is that as I was nudging it around, it seemed to be drifting, like the amount of color in them. It doesn't look terrible. It's pretty close, but I don't think that's how it should work. I don't know if Figma messed something up, or if it's a blend mode issue. Maybe there's a better blend mode, or I don't know. Kind of hungry. I'm not sure what kind of leftovers we got. I know there's a couple slices of pizza. Kind of feel like going to get some kind of like Italian beef or something. Maybe I go to Bona. It's expensive though. And I haven't done jack shit today to earn it, so maybe I just don't eat anything. Could go on a fast. I need to lose some weight. Could just stop eating for a few days. That's not terribly fun to do, but maybe the simplest thing to do for a minute is to just have independent sections that are like spaced out and not trying to flow with each other. Whoops. That's not what I wanted. Like, just put the shit next to it and not care what it looks like for a minute. I don't know why this is so hard for me to think about. It's like, would that work? Could I do nested tests? Should I even try and do nested tests? Because it's way harder, and, well, what is a test? What does it look like? tests, test class is basically test. This is a root level test. And then there's just a block to put some shit in. And it just has a quick and easy rendering and has the button to isolate it and all that good stuff. But like, also, oops, do something here and then test. This is a subtest. This is nested properly. With the simple hash matching that I did, it's not gonna getting the whole routing and isolation thing to work is gonna be a pain in the butt. So maybe I need to just skip that. Maybe I just make this look like this and go with it. But I don't know. Do I do a second one here? And how do I do all that? Like, what's the best way to set it up? Do I need a sidebar? Navigation, multi-columns, single columns, start simple, don't worry about it. Fuck, man. It's so bad. I feel so drained. And this doesn't matter. None of this matters. This is all just busy work. Like, let's see if we can figure it out. And I have, and I am, but it's slow because my brain doesn't fucking work so well anymore. I'm just kind of like drifting and fuzzy and fighting this like... There's something weird going on in my brain. A spiritual battle is what some people might call it, I think. That's kind of fucked up. What kind of spirits am I battling? I've never met them. Can't see them. Can sometimes feel some crazy shit, but what is the point of all of it? Just keep fighting? I don't know, man. It feels bad, but not fighting doesn't necessarily feel any better. But like, when the goal is to make like a website, so why is that a spiritual battle? Like, what the fuck, God? Like, what are we fighting over here? What's crazy is that it says I've been streaming for 3 hours. And I sort of remember the last time I looked at that, it was at like an hour. Maybe it was an hour and 20 minutes, which is then part of the reason why I was like, wow, that was like 2 hours ago. Somehow, 2 hours just disappeared, but getting weird headaches right now. And they kind of come out of the blue sometimes. It's like, okay, hello spirits, thanks for withdrawing my soul without telling me. And also making me play this shitty game where I'm just miserable most of the time, trying to do something that doesn't matter, not getting paid for any of it. I mean, maybe I just go get some Wendy's or something real quick. Fuck. I'm gonna drink some Dr. Pepper with that fast food, get some more caffeine in me. It's probably not a good idea. I'm all slouched over and my back gets all cramped up and fuck. Man. Alright, why is this hierarchical content so tricky? Well, it's a combination of, really it's just like the preview. Well, so the thing with the tab is it's just a single button and a single area. There's no real like preview. And you could upgrade that tab thing to more of like a preview, like I sort of have been here. And that makes sense But it still seems so overly complicated, like, in a way. Well, so one of the tricky things is that in order to render the tabs properly, you have to you need all the tabbies, the little links, to be rendered together, and then you have to go through each one and render it, and then you have to basically loop through all the pages or all the tabbies or whatever, and then you go back and you loop through them all again to render their content. Although you don't actually have to do that, you can just render one of them at a time, and then upon activation you can lazy render the next one, or you can just render them all and hide them all but the one that's active, but that's a lot of extra work and you may never actually click the other tabs, and so, like, why? Now, what if when you click the tab it kind of stutters a little bit and takes a split second for it to render before you can see it? Now you have a flash of bullshit potentially, and you might be able to get it to work properly, but maybe not. It's a whole different thing. But I guess with these tests and just getting kind of like a tree, it's just, I've seen a lot of different tree UIs, and the way it all lines up and the way the coloring and design, whatever, fuck that. It's more just the structure, the top down, how many levels at what points, how big, it's like, I feel like there's a really simple, just basic, like the most fundamental layout, hierarchical layout like this, like, boom. This is kind of what I'm looking at right now. But it already has, well, this doesn't really work. It's like, how did we get here? This isn't it. But this is pretty simple. A little competing or confusing. But no, it's like, well, this one, yeah, is the same thing. Where's the problem? The problem is getting it to kind of recursively work. Which sort of works here. I don't know if how deep it needs to go. This is the problem, but it's like, if I wanted to create, let's say it's a UX library. And so instead of being people, this is like user interface stuff. And then we have all the main categories of user interface stuff, like forms and layouts and typography and images and whatever. And frankly, they need to be cross-referenced, because there's image layouts and there's text layouts and there's all kinds of shit that cross-references each other. And so that's already like kind of boiling my brain. And well, how deep does it need to go? Well, the whole idea here is, I don't know, but generally when you're creating recursive things, the beauty is that it doesn't need to, like, you don't need to artificial limitation. It just keeps going, and that's kind of what we have here. Now, obviously, the side-scrolling thing is going to be an issue, and I'm just going to potentially ignore that for right now. So that's fine, but I guess the next part here is, it's a little kind of confusing to me, is the hierarchy, or sorry, the scale. Really, the size is 370 pixels wide to this one. Do we ever need one of these smaller previews, like in between here or something? I don't know. And what is this? Like, what are these tabs? What do we call this? What is this structure where we have the small one, then the big one, and then infinitely number of equally sized columns? Like, and could this just go? Well, we could just get rid of this thing, right? Like, we just load the page but then you don't have these siblings, which may or may not matter. It's not actually all that clear here that, well, I guess this is like a navigation, and it should be fairly clear that these are things that you can click on. But in terms of the general organization of the page, it's like, okay, we have people, and here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, including Albert, and he's the first one, and he's active. And here's everything about him. This is his page. I don't know if these are his kids or something, but anyway, they all took different last names, apparently. yeah, so the relationship between all these things, especially if it's just something simple as tests, like here are the tests, here's test one, test two. Well, it's sort of the simple list of text only and no preview bullshit. It's kind of what I was getting at a second ago. That is the simplest way. But I don't even know which one of these would be the best at explaining that. This one's sort of the starting point. So is the idea that you don't put any preview here, or the preview is just the table of contents only, and is essentially just a list of words. And so maybe it's exactly this type shit here. Smaller and the exact same font kind of relationship. That's kind of interesting. Boom. Because this isn't very much like this, and if we just change this over to Floyd Miles, then, you know, I could just change the color too, and then that's pretty goddamn simple, right? And in fact, the typography, it's not the same, but it's actually kind of interestingly, I don't know, does it compete and kind of clash with that one? Should they be different? That's a question that I may never answer. But the way that just kind of like, how simple it is to just drag and drop it in there. But it's also kind of the thing that I'm grasping at, is that it's like simpler the better. Just a list with sub things, and no need for previews or whatever. But not having the ability to do a preview seems like a limitation. So I actually kind of think I should back this all up. Let's go ahead and... Alright, what I'm going to do is I'm going to... I'm going to delete these three. I'm going to copy this whole thing, then go back in time, and I think that's it there. I'm going to come down here and paste this other version of it. Maybe Shift A these together. Okay. So yeah, just lists and sublists. Just the titles, not the contents. No previews. But any one of these could have previews of itself, and you know, like when you click on it, what happens? Does it just launch over here? And can you launch this one over here with then all this extra content around it that might not be clear that this is even a clickable thing? Like if when you first saw this was white, and you're just reading through this, and then you see this kind of like, this is more navigational structure, like this should be maybe up in here, so maybe that's what I'm missing here. But this is all of a sudden getting like so intertangled and so many fucking options that it's actually hurting my brain. Yeah, it feels bad. It feels tingly. Feels like short of breath, short of thought, lack of clarity, mental fatigue, burned out, fried brain, coffee, like just that neurotic, like frazzled, kind of burned out coffee feeling. Well, it's coffee and cannabis. They have a special interaction that just makes me burn out faster. I do know that multi-column content is the way of the future. And it's important to figure these things out because it's sort of the way that, you know, you can allow things to evolve faster. And it's not just about like infinitely repeating columns. I think that having like main columns and the kind of sub columns is probably more like scale this thing up So one of them's bigger and one of them's smaller. But it's tricky. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think maybe if I say stay away from the multi-column stuff, then it definitely simplifies it, but then it's just kind of like, I don't know, it's boring. It's like this giant, I have this giant screen and nothing to do with it. My screen is 3,400 pixels wide, and I want it to actually display some shit in the right way. And who made this broken layout? Holy shit. I think it is like 1440 or something. It's about the size of my screen. I want some big shit to put in there. I mean, I could just render columns manually. Maybe I just create a column component or something, or it's really just a view function for putting some shit into separate columns. Figuring out how that responds on mobile is, or even just all the way down. It's like if it fills the space well, then it's going to be crammed in when it gets down to like 1920, which is a standard resolution. Yeah, like the sidebar would, the whole layout needs to shift. Fuck, and that sucks because it's like as you start making it work at a different resolution, you break it at a different resolution, and it's just this never-ending, like, I do think a decent responsive setup is possible where you can have a minimal amount of code that just intelligently adapts. You have to get like a lot of little things kind of adapting simultaneously, and unfortunately that's makes it way harder because, well, text will wrap and break at different points, and just, all kinds of funky shit happens, and you just got a whole bunch of moving targets. Now, if you do it the right way and you have strong layouts, a lot of times it'll just all work without any problems, but easier said than done. I think I'm gonna go try and get some food because there's really nothing else my brain can do right now. Pretty frustrated though, because I don't know, I feel like I'm chasing ideas, trying to do something useful. I know I need to focus and like get something done on this website, and the path to do that I thought might be to create this a strong navigation so that I could start creating things and actually create a bunch of things and maybe have some possibility of keeping it organized. Like, the more things I make, the more kind of they need to be organized, right? Like, you can't just put all 100 random things onto one page. That's gonna look something like this. Putting everything on one page, and it's just, when you start moving quickly and you're just duplicating shit and throwing shit around and dragging and dropping and editing and duplicating and versions and variants, and they're all mostly the same but a little different, and it's madness, man. It's fucking madness. This really high contrasty one up here it looks kind of interesting, but I don't know if I like it. It's just too much light and then dark and light and dark. But I do think like one little widget, a recursive widget, might be able to do the trick. And this is, I don't know, this kind of makes me feel like I'm just missing something here. Well, maybe it's just recursive tabs, which is sort of just like the same, where was that double settings here? The same thing twice Now, just with a little bit different color could, or using an algorithmic, like transparent color builder or whatever, kind of like I've done before, that could be all that you need. Now the hierarchy, the double layers, and like all the things you can click and what it all looks like, and oh man, it's just feel like I feel like there's an easier way. I feel like the spirit is, I don't know if it's helping me or harming me or holding me back or whatever, but there's definitely some crazy juju going on in my head right now. Trying to figure this out, trying to lead my spirit, my brain, my actions down the correct path to success. And I mean, I think anyone watching this would just be like exhausted by how fucking exhausting I am. But I mean, you have no idea what it feels like to actually be wrestling with some sort of, well, it's sort of my brain. My brain is kind of trying to wiggle and writhe its way out of this mess and doesn't really want to help. Although in a lot of ways it does want to help. We're actively trying. We're getting a lot of shit done and making some progress. It's just not in the right direction. So this is where just talking and thinking it through helps me process and helps me try and get closer to something that could work. But I don't know if there's one kind of reusable thing. Maybe the simplest component is a column here, and this is a column, and this is a column. They're laid out differently. There's different amount of wrappers, and that's partly just for the coloring and whatever. I could potentially get a column system where it's just add column, remove column. Now the sizing of the columns is a whole nother issue, using flexbox and grids and responding to the size of the viewport. That's a fucking whole thing. Alright, I'm gonna go get some food because I gotta be back in an hour for the kids. I'm sure I'll just pick up some food and eat it in the car, but alright. BRB. Probably won't stream again because I don't think I got anything left in me, but who knows? Maybe I'll edit it. And the biggest problem with restreaming is not like I really care about streaming that much, but I have to go in here and edit the I have to go in here and edit the title of the stream, or else it doesn't save it properly. It's kind of a bad workflow, but I guess it is what it is. Well, so I guess I may or may not start streaming later. I'm not really sure on that, but not like anyone's watching anyway.